are going to talk about the blood pressure and what do we mean by blood pressure. Blood pressure is the measure of the force that your heart uses to pump blood around the body. Blood pressure is measured in millimeters of mercury, and it's measured in two values. We have the systolic value and the diastolic value. So if in the diastolic pressure, this is the pressure when your heart pushes the blood out. When the ventricles contract, the ventricle contracts and pushes the blood outside the heart. And diastolic pressure, this is the pressure when your heart is at rest between the beats. So we are going to look at the factors that influence blood pressure, and the number one factor we find here is the cardiac output. Cardiac output is the amount of blood, is the volume of blood flow from the heart through the ventricles. And we find that cardiac output can be calculated by stroke volume. Stroke volume, that's the volume that your heart produces, the volume of blood that your heart is able to pump out in one beat. So in that one stroke, that's the stroke volume. Then we multiply it by the heart rate. We check how many minutes does the heart, as in how many times has the heart managed to beat within 1 minute. Then we multiply that, then that gives us the cardiac output. So we also find that any factor that causes cardiac output to increase by elevating the heart rate or stroke volume, or both the heart rate and the stroke volume, will elevate the blood pressure and promote blood flow. Another factor that we find that affects the blood pressure is the peripheral vascular resistance. Peripheral vascular resistance refers to compliance, which is the ability of any compartment to expand to accommodate increased content. The increased content we are talking about here is the blood. So we also have another factor affecting blood pressure is the volume of circulating blood. There's a time we find that the volume of the blood might be high, and we also find that there's a time that the volume of the blood might be low. So volume of circulating blood is the amount of blood moving through the body, and we find that increased venous return stretches the walls of the atria where specialized baroreceptors are located. And what are these baroreceptors? Baroreceptors are pressure sensing receptors, and they are found in the atria. As the atria stretches, the cardiac center responds by increasing the sympathetic stimulation and inhibiting parasympathetic stimulation to increase the heart rate. Another factor is the viscosity of the blood. This is the thickness of the blood. So we find that by the term viscosity, we mean the thickness. So viscosity of the blood is the measure of the blood's thickness, and it's influenced by the presence of the plasma protein. The plasma proteins we are talking about here, the albumin and the globulin. We talked about those ones in the previous videos. So those are the plasma proteins that increase the blood thickness. You also find that they formed elements in the blood. They formed elements, these are the white blood cells, the red blood cells, those are the formed elements that are found in the blood. They increase blood viscosity. If blood viscosity increases, the total peripheral resistance also increases, thereby reducing the blood flow. So we sorry. Systemic arterial blood pressure depends on the cardiac output and the total peripheral resistance. If the blood viscosity and the total peripheral resistance rises, we find that the systolic blood pressure must then increase for cardiac output to be maintained. Another factor affecting the blood pressure we find that is the elasticity of the vessel wall. The vessel wall we are talking about here are the arteries, and mostly the arteries. Elasticity of these vessel walls refers to the capacity to resume its normal shape after stretching and compressing. Let's say, for example, there was, from the venous return, there was a high amount of blood that was being taken towards the atria, and we find that the atria expanded because so as to accommodate the large volume of blood, and we find that the excess volume is corrected, and now we find that we have the normal blood flow. So we find that the blood vessels had increased in size. So after the increase in size, Are they able to return back to their original size after there's a correction made in the amount of blood entering the heart or the amount of blood passing through the blood vessel? Is the blood vessel able to return back to its original size? So that's what we mean by the elasticity of the blood vessels. If artery walls were rigid and unable to expand and recoil, the resistance to blood flow would greatly increase. The blood pressure would rise to even higher levels and in turn require the heart to pump harder to increase the volume of blood expelled by its pump and maintain the adequate pressure and flow. So that's all I have about my video today. I majorly focused on the factors influencing the blood pressure. That's the end of our presentation for today. If you found the video to be helpful, make sure you don't forget